Well, it's about divine time, isn't it? Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to my channel. I am Lucy, and this is my channel, Alchemy by Design. This is my first official upload, and I've thought really long and hard about what kind of content that I would like to post here on my channel. Respectfully, it's kind of hard to decide because I don't want to put myself into a box. As I sort of figure it out, I hope that whatever information I do end up sharing with my audience, you guys appreciate, regardless. Some of the things I might talk about here may be a little woo-woo, taboo, or controversial to some, and if that's not for you, that's okay. However, I've studied a lot of different topics throughout my life, and the most that has really captured my interest, that I feel strong emotions about talking about and sharing with the world, is mostly metaphysical and esoteric topics. These are things that I have enjoyed learning about and feel as though part of my mission here on this earth is to share what I've learned with everyone else where I can. And I think it will be fun as I continue to learn alongside of all of you. My first topic that I would like to talk about today is going to be divine timing, which many people know as something maybe sort of like synchronicity or right place, right time, or things that might also be considered maybe like coincidence to the average person who maybe doesn't necessarily believe in all the woo-woo, which is okay. One thing I want to kind of touch on this topic really quick before I begin is that with the development of things like AI and algorithms, it can be kind of hard to discern online what may be considered a divine timing or divine symbolism or anything else like that. And so I always recommend using a bit of discernment before you take whatever is given to you surface level. Even though things like that can play into divine synchronizations, it is definitely something to be mindful of, that not everything is a sign from the divine just because it's in your face. As technology gets smarter, it's making us easier to figure out as people. And so I recommend using discernment whenever it comes to anything that you might see online as far as advertisements go. Now, getting into the juice, if you've ever felt stuck while it felt like everyone around you was kind of ahead of you in a sort of timeline or in what maybe they have together in their lives, or if you've ever found yourself wondering when your life will really start, this video is totally for you. The timing of your life isn't random or delayed, but actually a third more precise thing that would be divine timing. The reason why I chose this topic as my first video is because my channel has always felt to me as like a divine timing in itself. My story, which I will talk about a little bit here since it is my first upload. I feel like you guys should know a little bit about me as a person too. But in general, divine timing has always been like super relevant in my life. When I was a teenager, I did come across the question of like wondering about my purpose in life or my existence. And when those questions started, it left me with even more questions about the universe and how things work. But one thing that dawned on me was that if I didn't exist, then the people whose lives that I've touched wouldn't have had the same experience. And those who were around me who changed my experience in some way definitely felt to me like it was a divine orchestration. Like they were supposed to be there for a reason, to learn the different lessons that I went through throughout my life. Some of the experiences I've had have been near-death experiences. I've probably had more than 10 near-death experiences at this point in my life, which is a really deep and traumatic topic to talk about or triggering. I'm a bit of a Scorpio, and so trauma and dark topics have naturally found me throughout my life. It's made me a little bit more comfortable to express these things with people once that I know that they're able to handle the conversation. But to jump back into our topic, let's talk about what is divine timing exactly. Divine timing is the moment when energetic potential meets real-world opportunity. Subconscious alignment matches conscious intention, and your path intersects people, lessons, and conditions needed to propel you forward changed in some way. Let's talk about a relationship that you would have wanted to be in, or had one that you were in that ended abruptly or in a way that you didn't really like. Some may try to argue that the relationship wasn't meant to be at all. However, I'm a believer that whatever you go through, you're supposed to go through it. Something in that relationship was a necessary catalyst for you in one way, shape, or form to get to the next point of your life. Or potentially could have been that you would have had to be a totally different version of yourself to be able to hold that relationship on an energetic level. And for whatever reason, you weren't an energetic match to hold the relationship. Why your timing might feel off. If your timing feels off, let me reassure you that it's probably not. Although some people may think, well, it has to be. Everything that I've tried to put in, like I don't seem to get the same thing back out that I'm putting in. Or maybe you're holding on to a lot of great beliefs that you feel should have some different outcome. And there's where I will say is probably the misalignment, or rather the things that you have to go through in order to reach the next level sometimes include things that we don't necessarily think of ourselves, but that particular incident, that particular relationship, and the things that come with it all kind of add up to change you dynamically as the person that you are. But with that being said, misalignment does happen. We're given free will. You may feel more misalignment when you're forcing what isn't meant to be open to open. And maybe it's not meant to be open necessarily because of you, but for somebody else. If you ever heard of the idea that some people block your blessings, where sometimes the people that we're around would energetically block us from what we are supposed to experience as people. And so the universe has a great way of yanking people, places, and things out of our lives that don't match up to what we're aiming for in life, even though in our minds we feel like it is. You may also feel this way whenever you're constantly comparing your timeline to others. So yeah, sure, your best friend might own a Mustang and have their own home, but there's something that's in their life that they're meant to experience and doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you, because what you actually want, or what you actually want to line up with, is more than the Mustang and the house, or is some other version of success that maybe you have just not tapped into yet on a fundamental level of understanding. You may feel more misaligned when you're moving from a place of fear or going through the motions, if you would, versus moving from intention and alignment. For this example, let's imagine that you keep digging up a garden bed, wondering why your seeds haven't blossomed yet. Or maybe you've overwatered your garden, thinking that that's the reason why your seeds haven't blossomed yet, where you're here flooding your garden to the point of death. And this happens usually because you're not integrating the lessons that you've learned throughout your process, such as gestation and getting lots of sunshine. So if divine timing is a thing and you have to go by some great divine clock, which it's not all a divine clock, right? We have an essence of free will that is absolutely integral to how we move and flow through the universe. And if we are on some grim timeline where everything is already pre-mapped out for us and the actions that we're going to take, then it doesn't really matter. You just do what you want anyways, because it's going to happen regardless. But if we do have free will, how do you get your blossoms, right? How do you go from constantly overwatering and digging up your seeds, wanting to know what you're doing wrong and how you're messing up? Or maybe you do know what you're doing wrong and how you're messing up, but you're not ready to integrate the lessons yet. If you want to reap the rewards of divine timing without getting yourself in a rut, I'm going to give you a few places to start. 1, stop forcing everything in your life. If you feel like you have to force everything in your life to happen, odds are you're not doing things in alignment with your divine timing. My advice for this would be to reconsider what you're forcing for. A big example for me would be like forcing a relationship. Let's say that in your mind, it makes sense to date XYZ person, but upon further investigation, you guys don't have a lot in common, or you guys maybe have some really misaligned ideas for what life should be like for each of you. And on the one hand, you could say, okay, I'm going to keep forcing my relationship with this person. I'm going to keep trying to make this happen because in my mind, that's the way it's supposed to work. Versus if you're saying, after reconsidering all of these things that keep coming to the surface, like not getting along about certain things or not being able to see eye to eye when it comes to the really big, important decisions in our lives, instead of trying to hold on to that as much as it may seem right to yourself, society, it's saying, I'm going to let this go with love, right? You don't want to do anything dirty. I mean, I guess you could, but I'm just a person. I also believe in karma. So always with love whenever I do anything, letting things go. So that way you can actually align with what is meant for you, with what that is the truest blossoms of your life. You may have an idea of how something is supposed to play out and work out. I've seen it time and time again in my own life before I really started getting the idea of alignment. And some people are kind of scared that alignment means like you can't have the things that you want in this lifetime. But I would actually argue for the fact that most of the time we don't really actually either know what we want fully, or if we do, we are too scared to talk about it. We're too scared to admit that that's what we really want. We think that we're supposed to want the big flashy bougie houses and the fast cars and the big bucks and all this other kind of stuff. But when looking at maybe the lifestyle that it takes to earn those dollars to get those things, or when it comes to looking at what you have to sacrifice in terms of spending time with your friends and family, or something else that actually doesn't align with what you really feel success looks like for you. This whole process is very personalized. The universe doesn't just say one size fits all for success, or one size fits all for fame and glory and whatever that might be that's on your big wish list. But make sure that you're not trying to force something to happen. Forcing something happen is the biggest way to get into like a sort of karmic debt, or really put a dent into the divine timing aspect. In the case that you do feel like you're having to kind of force a lot of things in your life, and I'm not just talking about putting in a little bit of effort. That's something indifferent entirely. Rather, energetically, you'll feel like you're pushing it, like you're forcing it to be something that it's not. In that case, I would say you need to reconsider what you're pushing for and try to start changing your concept of pushing for things to happen into receiving the happenings, in the sense that the things that you want and that are really meant for you in this lifetime will come to you a lot more naturally than if you're going out there and like striking every match until something sparks, or trying to throw noodles at the wall hoping something sticks, right? And the same thing can be applied for content creation. But overall, if it feels like you're wrestling a locked door, the door is not for you, sweetheart. And if it is, I mean, you still may go through it, and that still might be something that you need to learn. But typically, I've found that in my adult life, I don't have to push for things anymore. And if I do feel like I'm pushing for something, I tend to scale back on that and kind of recognize what's happening, and just sort of get myself into a state of mind where I'm just allowing things more naturally into my life, versus trying to force outcomes that just are too much effort, too much trial and tribulation. And to me, it's a clear sign that something's not for me. Another thing is prolonging certain situations. So we could say relationships or a job. Maybe you start feeling like endlessness to it. There's no real end in sight for how much hardship you'll have to encounter with a relationship, with a job, with a community, with anything. And I will argue that once you start kind of feeling that way about something or another, maybe time to reconsider and pull back a little bit, as that could be a big sign that you're wrestling the locked door. Some of the things that we do are only temporary, and they're only meant to get us from point A to point B in this life. So if that's the case, you may be in one of those places where it's just meant to be temporary. And the minute that you can kind of pull your energy back to yourself and what is actually going to work for you long term, and kind of redirect that energy into something a bit more calming and something a bit more grounding, you'll find better results. Practicing a certain level of detachment at any given point in time can help with a lot of this emotional turmoil that we might feel when it comes to letting things go, so that way better things can come in towards us. 2, we're going to follow micro nudges a little bit more. These small intuitive pulls can often lead to really big shifts for us if we follow them with heart and with a certain level of commitment. Think back to maybe the last time you thought to double check something or initiate something, even if it was something as small as calling a friend or checking the time. For me, every single time that I check the time is almost guaranteed it's an angel number. And as far as angel numbers go, there are a lot of people that think that angel numbers have particular meanings and what have you. And if you feel like something like that resonates with you, then by all means, I'm not going to argue with you and say that it doesn't mean something for you. However, for me, I don't find that any particular number has a specific meaning for me necessarily. I just know that when I see angel numbers, it's usually a confirmation that my timing is right and I'm where I'm supposed to be at any given moment. 3, clean up your energetic field in your physical space. Doing things like decluttering, boundary work, somatic work, doing small rituals. These practices not only help to recalibrate your nervous system, but also helps you to kind of touch back in with your intuition. Some of these small pieces, like doing certain breath work or doing certain exercises, could be a really important piece to the next step of your life. And the 4th thing that we're going to talk about is asking for signs from the universe, from God, from whatever you believe in. And you're going to ask for these signs with clarity. The easiest way that I can recommend asking for signs with clarity would be to ask whatever your higher power is. It could be God, if you follow a particular religion, whatever God that might be for you, Or if you're not religious and you're more of a spiritual person, that could be asking for signs from the universe, or asking for signs from maybe like your higher self or the higher, whatever the higher beings are. And this could be something that you say out loud. This could be something in your mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of like prayer or in the form of anything like super formal. But I do recommend asking formally in some way, shape, or form. Doing so will kind of like ignite the process a little bit more, that your signs will come more rapidly and with more conviction, if you would. Some people will use like code words or some like a symbols with the universe that kind of register to them. Same thing for me with the angel numbers, right? Where when you're asking for these signs, you'll get confirmations in ways that will make sense to you. It may not make sense to anybody else, and that's okay. A big part of this journey is not necessarily having everybody else know your business. It's not really anybody else's business how you communicate with the universe or with God or with anything else. And I feel like the people who tend to focus on stuff like that, wanting to kind of like enforce how to communicate, are people who are just not aware yet that we all have a unique energetic signature with the world around us. If it feels right to you, definitely ask out loud if you want, or in the form of a prayer. I've seen some like would ask into a notebook. I tend to ask for a sign that I'm ready for something, or a sign for what I'm ready for next, or a sign on like which direction to step into. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. And how I got into content creation in the first place. And maybe we'll kind of see the thread weaving here of divine timing in my own life when it comes to making content. So when I was a girl, 7 years old, 8 years old, this was way before YouTube came out, or maybe the beginning stages of YouTube, where I would just make home movies with my friends. We would do little skits and just play around on my parents' camcorder. And that was fun for me, right? I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to do anything. I just knew how to cut the video from one thing to another, but I wouldn't edit anything. And I didn't post really any of these like fun home videos to any kind of like social platform at the time, which was just pretty standard YouTube. And then this was before people even got paid to put stuff on YouTube. It was like the beginning of the beginning of the beginning of our content creation boom. I used to write little blurbs, pretend like I had my own blog or magazine, and do like little cutouts and make collages and stuff like that with my friends. And that was a big source of like creative fuel for me as a person. When I was in middle school, I would take videos at school, even though I wasn't supposed to, and make videos with my friends and post those things to like an old YouTube that I had that has been taken down since then. I got locked out of it anyways, but I would do little videos on there, and even at one point had developed like this list of YouTube ideas that I wanted to do with one of my friends. At the time though, I didn't know this then, but looking back, hindsight of course is 2020, but looking back, one, I'm glad that it didn't work out that way, because more than likely half of the stuff that I think we even drafted up for YouTube video ideas would have been probably physically harmful to me in some way, shape, or form. And then having enough medical issues throughout my life, it probably would have been a bad idea for me to go through with half of those things anyways. And then two is that a lot of the friendships that I had then that I kind of anticipated making videos with people and doing were not really good people for my life anyways. So eventually like they just phased out of some of these friendships. And later on in high school, I kind of gave up on the idea of doing any kind of content. I just kind of thought of it as like actors and actresses and celebrity type of deal where, if you had access and the right stuff, then like, sure, you could get YouTube famous or whatever, but people were not even making money then unless they were selling merchandise. And I kind of understood that. Or I guess if they had a contract or something, but at that age, I wasn't even aware that they had contracts. Like I just assumed that they made all of their money from merchandise and that was really it. Fast forward into college where I kind of like rediscovered some of my childhood favorites as far as YouTubers go, and kind of figuring out that they were making money with it. I kind of started getting into the gear of, okay, well, if they can make money, that's whenever beauty tutorials started kind of becoming like the real popular niche on YouTube too. My mental state, my psyche in general, my health, pretty much everything in my life was going through an entire process that, I couldn't really fast forward through, but it was definitely creating something much more beautiful for me going forward, especially when it came to content creation. And I began to develop a different relationship with it and kind of realized that the YouTubers that I love to watch had communities of people who loved them and people who wanted to know more about them, and they were doing really good things for the things that they kind of gave a shit about. And to me, that was, oh, wow. And I dreamed for a long time of wanting to do something like that. But once again, I had the belief that it was limited. Not everybody would do that. And the only people who really got big with it were either extremely lucky or were born into some kind of wealth that made it easy for them to be able to accomplish. And sure, you could say that is still relevant even today. However, because of how the algorithms have progressed and because of how easy it can kind of be to monetize a channel and get kind of brand sponsorships and all these kind of ways and accesses and avenues for payment with social media in general, it did kind of start changing how I felt about it, but not enough to make me feel secure in being able to do it for myself. It was more or less just kind of I supported my fellow creators or people who wanted to create with a little bit more respect and dignity, and understood that they were doing a job and that it must be a really fun job. It seemed like something that, why doesn't everybody want to do this, right? I was in a relationship that wasn't good for me at this point in time as well. And looking back on it, divine timing wise, I definitely think it was really a big thing that I didn't go, viral or something crazy like that at this point of my life, because my health, my relationship, my mindset about life, all of these things were so fundamentally flawed in the sense of how I held myself, how I thought of myself. And I just think that had I did a video that went big, it would have probably just not ended up being the best thing for me. And I also didn't really have anything to record on. The cameras that I owned at the time were not very good quality, and I didn't have a lot of storage space on anything. So as all of these technological bits kind of came together for me, it was something different too. Fast forward to 2019 when I made my first ever makeup tutorial video on December 31st, going into the new 2020 new year, right? And to me, that was such a big deal. I was working a job that I didn't like anymore, that I had actually went as hard as I could to progress in that job. I felt like I kept getting hit with a lot of blocks, and as much as I tried to force it to be a thing, I kept getting hit with more and more resistance. So something in my mind was just kind of why am I hitting so many brick walls? Is it because I'm not old enough? Is it because I'm not this or that or whatever? But in that time period, I discovered more about myself, who I was as a person. And as I was met with resistance, I started kind of gravitating into a spiritual journey, along with some of the things that I was kind of going through in my relationship at the time. So things that really just changed how I looked at the world and changed how I saw content creation. But I made my first tutorial. I was really not impressed with it. It wasn't my favorite. I've put up two after that, and have taken them all down since then, because I just wasn't really a fan of, one, how I looked, and two, I wasn't really thrilled with my skill level at the time of presenting in general. I just felt kind of short-sighted when it came to the planning of it. I just winged it, right? But it did reaffirm to me that I wanted to do that in some capacity. In 2019, I didn't even think, or 2020 really, right before COVID hit. I really just wanted to do the content creation, but I knew that it would take time and it would take development, and that I couldn't rush the process, and I had to start somewhere. So I wanted to start. And so that's what I did. I said, okay, I'm going to make this video and it's going to go out, and then I'll get some views and it'll be fine. And then I posted my second tutorial and it got some views and everything was kind of fine. But at that time, COVID was happening. Or talk about divine timing. My phone just died. So I'm back. And I have red cream soda over some ice that I'm just chomping on, right? Because my throat's been getting kind of scratchy throughout this whole video, and I'm like, gosh. But I'm doing the video, so oh well. Is anyone else a big ice chewer? I'm a big ice chewer. I love a good small crunchy ice. Don't ask me why, but I've always eaten ice. So Where was I at? I made my little tutorials. I ended up leaving the job. I wanted to actually start doing content creation full speed ahead. Like, I came to a conclusion during COVID that doing content creation was something that I really wanted to do professionally as a job. I just didn't really know like how to start or where to start. And I understood that, you know, I wouldn't be like an overnight success per se, just like right off the bat without any kind of development. But I did know that I wanted to do something a little bit more than I was able to at the time. And then fast forward through the next like 3 or 4 years, and so much was happening between my relationship, my jobs, my psyche, and like just like my overall development on a spiritual level. Doing the content creation full time, like I guess like I could do some of it, but I didn't really have all of the stuff worked out, nor did I have like the self-esteem and the image that I really wanted at the time. So to be able to get to a point where I felt comfortable posting online, it did take me a long time to even get to where I am now with it. And then beyond those things, it was also really coming to the allowance to myself that I am allowed to want this for my life. I'm allowed to want to create content for a living. I'm allowed to want these things, because I felt like for a really long time I dealt with a lot of beliefs that said that for one reason or another I wasn't good enough to ask for that. I wasn't pretty enough, or I wasn't smart enough, or I wasn't like in some really super niche area of life. And then a lot of the ideas that I had felt like they weren't good enough to share with anyone. Now, was any of that true? No, but at the time, like that's what I was working with, and so here we are. But I had to allow myself to even want to make content and allow myself to be okay with the idea of being a content creator professionally. There have been a lot of people who throughout the years are like, oh, influencers are this and that and whatever, and content creators are so bad and terrible and cringe, and oh my God, it's so cringe. In reality, without a lot of these people, half of the businesses out there wouldn't even be making half the money that they are, because influencers and content creators are an extremely important part of the economical flow, if you would. And it took me a while to really accept that, in a sense of it's okay for me. It made sense for other people to be doing it. I would look at PewDiePie or Bailey Sarian or anyone like that and just would think to myself, yeah, they deserve this. They totally deserve this. They're so funny. They're so insightful and inspirational and whatever. And it was okay for them to want it and to have it. But for me, I just didn't feel like I was enough in one way or another. So I had to really push through that belief system to even get to a point where I felt comfortable to start writing scripts for myself like I did for this video. Last year, at the beginning of the year, I left the relationship that I've kind of been referencing throughout this entirety. And I lost like 50 pounds or so, enrolled myself into school to start making content professionally, and learned some of the key skills that I would need to really actually start making more high quality works. Now they have a bunch of apps and everything else like that you can kind of do things with. But to me, I just felt like I wasn't enough where I was at. Like I needed to go to school and learn. And so now I'm currently like midway through a degree, and I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do with that. Don't tell them I said that though, I guess. But I'm halfway through a degree and I'm still learning a ton of valuable different skills. But just coming forward to sort of realize that half of the stuff that I felt like I needed, I didn't really need anyways. It was just the allowing of myself, like my mental state, to be able to say, okay, like this is okay, and it's safe for us to want this. It's safe for us to try to pursue this as something professionally. And another thing entirely to work through the judgment and all of the other things that kind of come along with doing content creation as a professional. But throughout all of this process, what I have seen is divine timing at super play, where anytime that I felt a tug or a pull towards this point where I'm at right now, something felt inspired about it. I just knew, or not inspired maybe is not the right word, but I just started getting more close to my intuition and learning that there were certain things that I was getting pulled towards that to me didn't make sense 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I just thought I was having fun. But as I have kind of started putting the pieces together, I can see where I have been led on a certain road. I've made certain decisions and felt divinely guided to do some of the things that I've done. And, you know, to most people, it wouldn't make any sense. But to me, it's made the whole world of sense. And so the same might be for you. You may feel called or compelled to do something that is totally outside of your comfort zone, but it makes your heart sing. And it says that this is where I'm supposed to go. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm a firm believer that we don't get half of the desires that we want or have without it having some kind of divine starting point. Like there's a reason why you need to go through these things, or there's a reason why you're craving to do the things that you want to do. And it's because it's a part of your bigger story, your bigger purpose here. The point, I guess, that I'm trying to get at is that every piece of your experience is valuable. You can get closer to your deepest desires, but you have to trust the timing. Every time I thought I missed an opportunity, something better was lining up for me in the background. So no, you're not behind. You're exactly on schedule. Nothing that is going to be meant for you in this lifetime will be withheld from you, just synchronized. If you love this video, if you like my story and are excited to see what else comes next, feel free to subscribe to the channel and definitely join me for the next video where I'm definitely going to be yapping about something universe related. Yeah, hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye.